All right. Hello. What is up? Good afternoon. Good morning. Good middle of the night. Happy Zone 2 run, whatever or wherever you are consuming this week's episode of the Hyrox Race Brain podcast. I'm your host, Matt Mason. Super excited to welcome my buddy, Jon Holman, to the show, RoxOpt founder. What's up, John? How you doing?
Good, good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Super pumped to have you on today. So this week's episode going to be a little bit different. We're going to take a break from. We've been interviewing, for those of you listening to the show, we've been interviewing some of the Elite 15 athletes and people that are on their way to the Elite 15. But today we're going to do a little bit of a pivot, and we're going to interview someone who I think might be able to help some of you out there break into the Elite 15. Some say what John has created is the money ball of Hyrox, so to speak. So I'm going to have to come up with a graphic with Jonah Hill and Jon Holman for this, but he may already have one. So for those of you that haven't heard or haven't seen on Instagram, if you've been living under a rock, Jon Holman has actually created what is called RoxOpt, and it is an in-depth race report that will actually show you how you did in your most recent Hyrox race. It will compare it to your historical races, and it also has the capability of some predictive analytics, which I'm sure he'll tell us how he went about that, to give you an idea of what you could achieve down the road. So we're going to get into all of that fun stuff, but before we do, we're going to kind of set a little bit of background. So I'm just curious. I met you, John, actually at the RMR summer camp this past summer in Denver. Shout out our friends at RMR, and shout out Camila and Luca for opening up their home. But I'm just curious, kind of walk me through a little bit about how you your background in Hyrox, how you found the sport, and kind of the backstory of how we got here today.
Yeah, definitely. So I think around a couple years ago, I came across Hyrox on Instagram, I think like summer 2022. And my wife Sarah's big into CrossFit, triathlons, Ironmans, her family is too. And I always felt like, you know, training for those wasn't quite like my niche, neither was Hyrox. And my friends and I used to like bring equipment to a field and ultimately do what really is Hyrox. So I got super excited, signed up for my first race in Los Angeles 2022. Went there, did it, immediately caught the bug. The just the production of those events just wowed me right away. Like it's pretty amazing what they put on. And then being someone who loves data, I love the fact that it's a standard race and there's so many interesting data points which you can track over time and really try to zero in on just trying to beat yourself and as well as competition. And what's cool about Hyrox is that it's all over the world and in a lot of cool cities. So my wife and I have used it as an excuse to travel, done a lot of races throughout the US, Italy, um, Spain, just recently Australia, and then yeah, it's been great, and the community's been awesome, and it just continues to keep us in it, and then obviously now building RoxOpt, really just immersing into Hyrox in every element of life. It seems like even socially, professionally, and then just health and fitness wise.
Yeah, John's wife Sarah is equally as cool. She owns a physical therapy clinic up in Boston, and together they started the Hyrox Boston Run Club. And true or false, John, you all did a Hyrox race on your honeymoon.
We went to Bali, and we were gonna be over there for 2 weeks, and it wasn't part of the original plan, but then I was like, let me just check some dates, see what's, and then sure enough, Brisbane, Australia was right in the middle, and kind of just threw it out there and um, just said, why not? And it ended up being awesome, and actually just met some people too, made some friends. So yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, Hyrox is definitely blowing up down there. It's cool that you got to be a part of that, and cool to see what you all are doing in your local community and how you're kind of helping to now grow the sport not only at the ground level with running the Boston Run Club and kind of help building it out in the Northeast, but also what you're doing with RoxOpt. So I'm curious before we kind of dive into the report, like where did the idea of RoxOpt come from, and kind of what background did you have in this kind of beforehand to build it out?
Yeah. So I've had a interesting, I'd say, just diverse career. Started initially in accounting, finance, consulting, did a lot of work there, and then really started to get intrigued by technology and just building tech products. And so like 6 years ago, started to pivot my career, went to grad school, got an MBA, and just also got obsessed with data science analytics. Really how I learned was, so I love the MBA and wanted to see if I could build predictive models that could compete and win money for NBA daily fantasy, so FanDuel, DraftKings, and really that's so I started doing that, and after a few years, got pretty
Did you
successful
did
at that.
did you win?
I did. Now I'm very risk averse, so it was always low dollars, and but once it was like validating to just get something that's profitable, but also I'm not someone who can just put tons of money into that, but after doing that, I was just intrigued by
That's smart. I'm sure your CFP is happy to hear that.
yeah, yeah, and I has been intrigued by entrepreneurship and trying to build tech products and kind of kept in the back of my mind of how do I maybe integrate sports, analytics, tech, and um, I listened to I don't know, it was a podcast or something, but someone who's a serial entrepreneur had mentioned the best way to come up with a business idea is to always try new things because you'll see maybe a problem in one area that maybe is completely solved in some other area. And for me, what I do with the MBA analytics and just working, at big global companies and what we do and supply chain predictive models, et cetera. Then I come to Hyrox and I see all this standardized data, race to race, and there's all these questions I have just for myself, and then I'm hearing from other athletes and coaches. And then, I can just see everything I've done in other areas and say, hey, let's apply this to Hyrox and see what we can do. And it first just started out as a way for me to help improve my performance. So just want to know like what's possible in the next race. If I go from open to pro, what can I expect? What's a good pacing strategy, and how do I know if I executed it well? And then, where are some strengths and weaknesses that I need to zero in on for training? So just evolve from there.
That's that's awesome. That's cool that you took a passion like the NBA, which I guess I have to ask because you live in Boston, but I don't think you're not a Celtics fan, are you?
Oh no, no. So I grew up in Seattle, so RP Sonics is a tough end with you draft Durant and then you immediately lose the team. But then I lived in Cleveland for 14 years. So during that whole LeBron Warriors run and that 2016 Game Seven is probably peak sports fandom. But it was awesome. Yeah. So Cavs all the way.
Well, as a Milwaukee Bucks fan, I'm glad to hear that you're not a Celtics fan after the Celtics gave us that work last night, but that's we won't digress down that rabbit hole. So it's cool to see how you took it though from, uh well, I guess they're both hobbies, but to take it from one thing that are, I guess, more so like into from a fan perspective and then into like, how can I use this to like actually make myself better, right? Like creating something for lack of a better term, for the greater good, which is cool. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I've got a RoxOpt report here. And we're going to go ahead and pull it up and kind of start to dive into what you have created. All right. You got me. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, sweet. So here I actually have the RoxOpt report. So I've gone in and I have run a report. I've used myself. So just a very average Hyrox Pro racer here. We're going to use myself because we got real data here and talk about how we can go ahead and use this. So this is actually what it looks like. They'll get emailed to you. I believe, keep me honest here, but is it just www.roxopt.com?
Yep. That's it.
All right. So if you want to go ahead and pull your own report, head on over to www.roxopt.com and you can go ahead and get started. Actually, first question for you, because I am curious about this. I pulled mine for a pro race, but you have the capability of doing this for, obviously team races are huge out there. Are you able to pull in team performances as well?
For doubles, we've done everything you can do for the solo races. We do for doubles. Don't currently have something for relay just because with four people, it's tough to really zero in on on the data who's assigned to who, but maybe in the future we'll figure out something there. But definitely, yeah, doubles. We do everything.
Okay, got it. And I got some questions to that, but we'll go ahead and get to that in a second. So, all right. So first thing here that we're going to see is this overview page, which I'm going to go ahead and let's see. Is this a little bit better? Can you see that now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. All right. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, it might be worth it to head over to YouTube. You're gonna have a much better experience because we're gonna be walking through what we see here on the screen. But so the first thing here is gonna be the overview. So it shows me the total time. So this particular race was a 1:10:36. Breaks down the run time with rock zone total, and station time. And then I'm assuming this seems pretty self-explanatory. This little graph here in the middle, this is how the individual stations stacked up to men's pro races all time. Is that correct? Like
Yeah, what you
percentile?
see in the what you see in the middle is just a nice chart to see where you rank all-time percentile wise for your specific division. Just an easy way to see all the stations plus the runs in one quick place. So for you, I mean, man, your wall ball, you're right up, you're pushing over 90 percentile. So great
That's
work.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's me. Me. Wall balls. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, but then I'm quickly reminded that the good Lord did not bless me with height for the ergs, as my ski erg leaves much to be desired. Um, but that's fine. We can work on that, and the row. That's ugly. Okay, so this just gives you a quick idea of kind of where things stand all time in the pro division. So we'll get into this next slide here. This one I'm really curious in, because I actually uh, saw Rich actually do a video explaining kind of how to use this. So walk me through this slide and the what's the story of my race, and how should we be thinking about this?
Yeah, so the inspiration behind this, as you know, when you see your Hyrox data, there's just so many numbers, so many splits, and I wanted to try to create something that could really just tell the story of what happened really quickly. Like, did you blow up? Did you pace well? Like, what happened? And I got inspiration here. I don't know if you've ever seen those, on ESPN.com. Whenever a game finishes, they have those win probability charts. So you see throughout a game. Usually, if there's a huge comeback at the end, it's like
Yep.
it's so what we do here is, if you ran a race before, we're able to we have a prediction of here's what's we expect you to hit in your next race. So that's the starting point. And then as you move and progress through the race, so each run plus station and rock zone, it's an updated prediction. So we're taking into account of all your past races and then now what you just did on the first run, the skier and the rock zone, then as you move along. And what I see from you, which is actually I see this a lot with athletes who do set a personal record, is they come out a little bit slower on the skier just to kind of ease into it, but then they're able to move faster and faster throughout the race. Sometimes, like for instance, in my Brisbane race a few months ago, blew up right after the lunges, and right at the end, this chart skyrockets. So someone like Rich, who's my one-on-one coach, he sees this right away, and it's just clear. It's like gotta build an extra capacity right towards the end. Like it's clear to him what happened as a coach, and immediately can start talking about how do we approach this differently. So for you, when I look at this, I imagine like you came out here, a little conservative, and then on the sleds, burpees did really
Yeah,
well.
actually last. This has never happened to me before. I was the last person in my heat out of the ski ergs. It was a lonely existence at that point in time.
Which isn't always a bad thing because the time, as we'll see in some of the other ones, the variance from like a low skier to a high skier is not a lot of time. But
Sure.
with the sleds and burpees, you can only and the runs, you can make up a lot more time.
Yeah, so it looks like, if just using this as an example, and I believe I saw it may have been a post from you, or it may have been a post from Rich. Not that this is the perfect race by any means, but this is kind of what uh we want to see, right? Whereas you're kind of growing into the race. So yellow is a little bit would indicate being more conservative, and then you kind of building throughout. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the last thing, what you don't want to see is have your predicted finish time go down right away. Like you just come out blazing. and then it skyrockets later in the race, which is
Sure.
essentially just capturing a blow up. If you can hold that,
So if this is the
kudos
one
to you.
time where a chart up and to the right is bad. Up and to the right, very bad. This in this graphic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And I'm curious, where do you how do you come up with the pre-race predicted time? Is that the average of previous races? Because when I look at this, my actual pre-race, but if the yellow line is my pre-race predicted time, that would have meant I was a 71 and a half or higher, which I actually think is still would have been a P. I'd have to double check, but I think at the time a 71 and a half would have been a PR for me, I believe, or it's because it's lower than the 71 and a half. So where does that pre-race predicted time come from?
So everything that goes into predicted numbers here are all driven. We have a machine learning engine, and the reason I don't like just using averages, because let's say you've only done one race, um, or if you've what you've done in the past is you're not it's not likely you're just going to repeat that. Like, you can be getting better race after race, and if you're someone
Sure.
that continues a trend, I think like if I just heuristically had to just make a prediction seeing that, like, you're probably going to get better versus someone who has just been flat for 5 straight races, maybe isn't training. Like, I wanted to build something dynamic, to be able to find those patterns. So what's going into all this is every race ever in Hyrox, and with all that split data, we can look at things like, we are looking at like trailing averages of your time and all the stations, but even things like what was your worst time in a station, what was your best time, and even how is directionally were you trending, all sorts of things to build that to help the model find those patterns that wouldn't be feasible to just manually do in Excel.
So when you built this model, you pulled in, I'm assuming you scraped that data from the Hyrox website. So you have just the all-time results from everybody from Rich Ryan to Ryan Kent to Hunter McIntyre to Jon Holman in Boston to Matt Mason in Milwaukee. Like, you've got all those results in a database that's what's using this to make these predictive assumptions.
Yeah, and what's powerful about machine learning models, it can it's not just going to apply the same approach to everybody. If it sees someone like a Rich Ryan, who's an elite level athlete, versus someone that maybe is over 2 hours and a beginner, it's going to recognize all these different patterns, because it doesn't make s- I don't- it, it wouldn't make sense to treat a beginner like an elite 15 athlete, but that's the power of
Sure.
what machine learning can do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. All right. So moving on. So this one, talk to me about this one a little bit. So I'm assuming based on when I looked at this. So this is performance versus predicted potential. You got this helpful graph at the top that shows you the color is the probability or the likelihood of that occurrence happening. I'm assuming that and I don't know, can you actually see my cursor?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So I'm assuming right here, is this the midline of expected performance? So we're talking
yes,
this, so anything to the left of this midline is greater than expected performance. Anything to the right would be worse than expected performance. And this dotted black line, that's just where you fell in that graph, correct?
yep. And with this, I got inspired by I don't know if you've seen a lot of companies coming out with wellness, blood diagnostic reports where you see, okay, are you in a healthy range? And initially, we build something where we predict what you're capable of in your next race, which is awesome, great to know. A lot of people want to know that. But then I realized once you run that race, you want to see, okay, where did I fall in that? Because now your next race prediction is now incorporating the race you just did. So you want to know where you landed. So that's what we're doing here is before you ran this race, here's the range of performance RoxOpt thinks you're capable of, and here's where you landed. And what's important, especially with each of the runs and the individual stations, it's not really realistic to just be at the highest end for all of them, because the strategy involved. And I think, honestly, what I see a lot with athletes that do have PRs is the skier is a little bit further, to the slower end, because just look at the range. It's 421 on your lowest end to 359. Like, that's 22 seconds versus wall balls 426 to 810. Like there's just a lot more variance, and
Variance.
it's
Yeah.
conserving that. So it's a and some people have different strengths and weaknesses. At the end of the day, run, you want to always, it's hard to see a good race outcome where maybe someone had a poor running day, but that's what's important. It's not necessarily, you shouldn't be down that, hey, everything is below expected at each station, because there is strategy involved, and this just helps highlight that.
Yeah, this is actually really, really interesting to see, because I thought that, just doing my own reflection, thinking back to Anaheim and how I felt after. This is nice because you can see your run rock zone, and it's much easier than taking run time, rock zone time, and trying to add together. I actually had thought that I had done better than before on that, but then looking at this, like, you could tell the reason why I walked away with a PR is most likely because my run times looks like it stayed fairly consistent to what it normally is, but I outperformed in 4 stations where, to your point, there's a wider variance. So my sled pull variance is almost 3 minutes. I performed better there. My sandbag lunge variance is 2 minutes. I performed better there. My wall ball, um, there's a 4-minute variance, and I performed toward the top in there. So that's interesting. It's a cool way to visualize that. I really like that. Anything else on this slide or graph in particular that you think is worth pointing out or that people should pay attention to?
Um, I think what's the reason why I like having the ranges is what's going into this is obviously, it's learning over time what happens in Hyrox race to race, what people usually do, at certain levels, like what that jump is. But what naturally comes in this is, things like course variation or things like that. Just basically what this range does is capturing uncertainty. This type of thing would usually be used, if you're trying to, you know, investment companies are trying to optimize their portfolio over time. And it's like, what's best case scenario, worst case scenario. That's kind of what we're doing here. It's just, but I'm translating it into something that's useful for Hyrox and thinking about, breaking it down to 5 buckets of, excellent, great, expected,
Yeah.
et cetera.
I'm curious if someone was, if trying to take this, not necessarily to the next level, but just like thinking about this data, is there something that you've seen? You mentioned like you see trends in data, like as an example, typically people who hit a PR, on the last slide, they're going to be a little bit slower on the ski erg, and then they're going to kind of build into the race. I'm curious, like, is there kind of like if I wanted to optimize for my next pro race, which is going to be Vegas, like, is there a certain number or combination of run plus rock zone plus stations that if you overperform on, like, that tends to result in like X% better? Does what I'm asking make sense? Like, is it 2 stations? Is it 3 stations? Like, how could people use this, or can people use this to affect their training?
Yes, I mean some people I think. Well, I'll say this. One thing I looked into, it's not necessarily part of the report, but I was curious myself, was I looked at when people did a PR, when people achieved a PR, how often did they in that race PR in other elements of the race? So like if they PR'd, did they also PR in the run plus rock zone? And not surprisingly, that was the most common part of the race, that when they have an overall PR, they PR'd in that. And I think it was close to 70%. It's been a while, but not surprisingly, the lowest one was skier, which was like in the 30s. So getting an overall PR, it's not essential, PRing on everything is probably, you're probably going to blow yourself up. But
Yeah, not
yeah,
attainable.
yeah.
Okay, so that's interesting though. So since you've pulled the stats, what are the top 3 stations that most closely correlate to an overall PR, or maybe the top 2, since you already mentioned Run Rock Zone. We can count that as being, that is over half the race. So Run Rock Zone is obviously a big one, but what are the 2 stations that have the biggest impact on someone getting a PR?
I mean, there wasn't like a huge separation, but if I recall, the sleds and wall balls,
Okay.
I think were the more. But again, I think it was in the 50s, low 60%. So it's not. There's plenty of examples where it doesn't, but that seemed to be those. And I think most. lot of coaches would say, yeah, having good wall balls, good sleds, and a good run is usually going to lead to a great day.
So the difference between the Amsterdam sleds and the Birmingham sleds, so to speak. Okay. All right. We are going to skip ahead here past our good friend Rich and get into the uh the running assessment. So okay, so this actually is interesting um to me. So this basically just again, the one thing I really like about RoxOpt is that it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of how you look at it. This, if I'm looking at this, this is basically just like from run 1 to run 8. Um, or excuse me, really from run 2 to run 7, how much variance was there in the run? So basically your ability to, this would show like, okay, as an example, a common one is someone hits the sleds really hard. Are they able to run a similar pace to what they were running before? Or did it chew up their legs and now they're going to drop 30 seconds and then we see them surge later? Is that correct?
Yeah, what we're doing here is just trying to give an helpful lens to your running splits that is useful. So what what I found and what I've learned mostly from coaches like Rich and Ryan Kent is that usually people do well when they can pace their runs and hit the same times relatively every time, and it's whether it's a sled, whether it's burpees, you can jump out of that station and continue to maintain that same pace. It didn't come out too hot and then blew up later in the race. So I tried to think about, okay, well, what's a good way to measure that and then visually show that? And as you all know, doing a Hyrox race, that first run is usually a little bit of a different length because you're starting out of that tent, and then the last one, I don't know why this is the case, but the transition, the rock zone into the wall balls is always part of the wall ball split. You'll notice there's always 0 times that. So the runs 1 and 8 aren't comparable across the other ones, and then even so that's why we highlight here runs 2 through 7, and I measure the variance. It's basically saying what percentage does it vary 2 through 7, and the lower percentage, the better. And the bar chart you see there basically compares you to Irish athletes all time. So for you, I mean, you varied 1.6% across runs 2 through 7, which is almost as good as it gets. Now you could walk every lap and have a perfect pace. So it's not doesn't just mean this guarantees you a PR, but it is an important element.
Shout out the homie Ryan Kent for building some strong legs that can that run under fatigue. Okay, cool. So this is basically a good way to use this would be figuring out like, all right, am I, is there a station that's chewing up my legs, and do I need to reevaluate pacing? I like that. Walk me through this this running assessment. I'm assuming this is the same thing, but more so just comparing you to how that particular course was running.
Yeah, so I mentioned the reason why we measure run percentage variation for 2 through 7 is just generally being able to hit that same pace every run leads to a better time. So what we're doing here is you have three races in the pro division. So I'm plotting your time compared to your percentage variation. And this is
Oh,
actually a
got
perfect
it. This
example.
is this. These are my own races. This is
Those
not
are
the
your own
race.
races.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So with your 3 pro division, I mean, it's almost a perfect straight uh, line. And it's basically showing as your percentage variation across your runs decreases, which means like nailing the pace, your overall time is decreasing. So it's generally that's what we see. Obviously, you may just crush on the stations and have a bad run, and you can still have a good day. But like generally, this is the pattern we see. And it's obviously done one race. It's hard to see much in here, but when you start accumulating races, this becomes a more helpful visual. But glad to see it's telling the story exactly as I've seen it, because yeah, this is a great example.
Cool. Okay. Awesome. And then this one again, um, fairly self-explanatory, in the sense of it just compares it. It's your comparing the race that you pulled to the most recent race. Is it the most recent race in that division or just your most recent race?
So this one will actually compare it to your last race. If you did
Okay.
this is a pro one, and what I
Yep.
try to do here is just try to create a visual where you can just right away within 5 seconds just see what is making up that net difference in the races to spend less time trying to calculate all that.
Yeah.
If you wall balls, I mean, wall balls offset a little bit by the runs and looks like the row, but that's kind of the main story of the race, and then a little bit better on all the other ones. But really, it's wall balls offset by run and row decrease, and yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, I need to again, unsurprisingly, the 5'9" guy needs to work on to work on his erg ability. I'm out there in the garage just pulling, trying to get better. Okay. All right. This one, I imagine there's a lot going on here. But I imagine it's actually pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk through this split benchmark.
Yeah, this one's pretty simple. I actually saw some Ironman triathlon analysis doing something like this. I was just curious exploring how other endurance sports, like what metrics they look at with data. And what this is looking at, so you did pro division, age group 30 to 34. It's looking at the fastest split anyone ran for any split. So, and then it's also taking your time and then taking the person you finished first in your age group. And what the chart is showing, those black bars is showing the difference in your time versus the fastest split of the day. And then the green line is where the person who finished first landed. And then the raw data behind it is this below. So you can actually just see that. So in that first row, the run one, the fastest time anyone ran in your age group and division was 3:39. You ran a 4:06, which is 47 seconds slower. The first place finisher ran a 3:26, which is 7 seconds slower. But just gives us it helps highlight that getting first in age group doesn't necessarily mean you win every single split, and you don't necessarily need to try to just win every split out the gate. And usually, when we look at this, even you see the person in the green, like that person is slower, didn't have the fastest split
Yep.
across the age group. So it's a balancing act and thinking about what are your strengths and weaknesses, and really trying to help people kind of think more strategically on what is the best way to approach a race, because it's not just trying to win every split unless very rare few, but at the age group level, just trying to get on a podium, probably not the best strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Is I was gonna ask if there's like an average that you see of like a percentage that you want to stay within, but I imagine that that's probably now that I'm saying it out loud, I realize that that's probably too hard because there's just going to be too much variance. Like as an example, we've already pointed out, like burpee broad jumps could be as little as 2 minutes, and as long as I guess it could be longer, but probably like 4 to 5 versus like wall balls. We've seen people do 3.5 minute wall balls, and we've seen people do 10-minute wall balls. So those percentages are probably going to be a little bit wonky spread out. So this is cool. I like this one. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. So now we know kind of, all right, this is what we did, but in Hyrox, we are all obsessed with, but I know we can do better, right? The classic, we cross the finish line and we're immediately thinking about when's our next race, what can we do? So you give us here this next race predicted performance range, which I think is great. And I assume you've kind of already teased a little bit of this, and like you're assuming that there's probably going to be some improvement from race to race, assuming that you're training. And then again, like I would imagine, like again, just using myself as an example, I've done 3 pro races. Each one has gotten better versus I think you use the example of, maybe I get a better excellent or I have a higher variance of excellent and great versus someone who, has run 5 pro races and they've all been the same time. So I guess walk us through this slide and kind of the thought process behind it.
Yeah, the goal here is really to help people set achievable, realistic goals. The majority of people doing Hyrox, when they run the first race, they're not finishing first yet. That may be the goal. Maybe want to qualify for Worlds, but with many things, you need small, achievable goals to get there. If you set a extremely high goal that's just like unrealistic, you're going to fall short. And there wasn't really a great way to understand like what are you capable of internationally? What is actually realistic to strive for? So that's what we're trying to do here. And again, what's going into this is your entire race history, and driving this is a machine learning model that can pick up on things. So let's say, let's say we have two athletes that their average race time in the past is 90 minutes. One athlete ran an hour and 40 minutes, an hour and 30 minutes, and then an hour and 20 minutes. It's still an average 90 minutes, but they've shaved off 10 minutes each time. Versus another athlete that just ran an hour and 30 minutes 3 times in a row. This, like, if you think about it, if you had to just predict, okay, what are each of these athletes going to run next? You probably say the one that did 90 minutes 3 times in a row, probably right around 90 minutes. The other one is making these huge leaps, going to improve. So that's why I don't just putting, just doing simple averages. Like, everyone's different, and the power of what we're doing is can pick up on all of those minute details, and relative to, where you're if you're in, if you are at 90 minutes, or if you're someone who's at 65 minutes, it's all very, very personalized, and the goal is really to try to create a range of what is actually realistic and possible. And what goes into this, there's, that peak potential, that excellent high end. What that represents is, let's say you have perfect training block, perfect recovery, great day of sleep, nutrition, everything. Even just the mental focus, just nailed that. And even maybe you're someone who responds well to like a neck and neck competition in a race, or if you getting a lead just gives you something extra. It's bringing all that into account. Plus, there is variance in Hyrox due to, the course. So it's capturing all of that. But it's something that, for you getting a 104.39 in your next race, it's not just out of this world impossible. Like, that is, it's possible. It's the way we translate up here. Excellent means 5% chance, but it shows you, like, that is something that it is in the realm of possibility based on what has happened throughout the history of Hyrox. I like to think of the great one as like a good stretch goal. It's really what this is saying. It's a 25% probability you can hit this, but that's definitely a good goal to stretch for. And expected is kind of, not easy, but, you know, expect that you should be able to hit this if you continue what you've been doing in the past.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. I think this is definitely the thing that I was most pumped to see, because I actually my goals for this year are in a pro race. I want to hit I want to hit a 65. That's like that's my stretch goal for sure. I don't think that that's going to be easy by any means, but kind of the goal is like 68. That's kind of been the thing I've been talking about with my coach of like, all right, think I can break 68 if everything goes right. Would love to break 65. But honestly, like, I've been saying that now for a couple months, but I had no idea, like, am I even capable of that? Like, I think I am. Like, I believe that I can, and the belief is half the battle. But I also, it's really cool to see that, like, okay, that's not actually that crazy. And depending on how my next race goes, who knows? Maybe, I pull my RoxOpt report after Vegas, and who knows? Maybe all of a sudden 62 is in the cards. That'd be sick. We'll hope for that. But yeah, this is awesome. So, and at the top, I'm assuming this is, you know, based on when I pulled this report, it ran 10,000 different simulations using my data, expected outcomes, things like that to come up with these numbers, correct?
Yeah, so if you're someone who like really wants to kind of nerd out in the details, I give that there for them, and what's below. So really, what's happening is the machine learning model is predicting like a distribution of what's possible, and then running a simulation, and the results are down below in that histogram chart. So you can kind of see, and basically that's how we get the 5%, 25%, 50%,
Oh, got it. Okay. So
25%.
the majority of races actually came out that I would run a 69, and then second 70. Okay. That's okay. That's cool. I was
Yeah.
one. Sweet. Okay. Cool. All right. So then, okay. Now this is cool. So, I mean, the whole thing is cool, but this is awesome because this, I feel like, gives, to your point of like giving you attainable goals. Um, this is looking at, okay, so my next race, what are those ranges of what would be excellent? So I'm assuming, going back up just real quickly to get the number, the excellent result would be a 104.39. If I was going to achieve that 104.39, basically the average that I would need to hit for all of these, run plus rock zone plus ski erg so on and so forth, these are the times that go into that number. Is that correct?
So not exactly. So in the description above, so what's happening here is, we predict what's possible in your next race, and let's say your goal is 65. There's many different paths to get to a 65. There's so many elements of the race. What we do
Okay.
here now is try to show, okay, what's possible for each station, kind of looking at each station independently. So it's looking at, so if you were to add up all of the excellent times at the high end of the range, it would be even faster than what's above. And the reason is because if you go all out on all of these, they're going to negatively impact another one. But this at
I
least gives
see.
you a range of what's possible, so you can build out some goals to kind of build your path to that goal you have above.
Okay.
And what's probably the most useful is on the right. I if I basically am measuring the range from excellent to poor, just to show how much time there is in that range of what's possible. And right away you can see, not surprisingly, the run plus rock zone is the most time to gain or lose in a race. And you see the ski erg, for you, 21 seconds, but then like the sleds, wall balls, like a decent amount of time. So this is just to help, you know, if you're struggling on the ski erg, you maybe don't need to just destroy and tackle that, focus that in your next training. This helps put some perspective on where are good opportunities for you to focus on for training, where you can actually really shave off some time as you think about your next race.
Yeah, I appreciate you explaining that. No, I love this because I actually, you know, uh, I've been thinking about like, okay, should I spend more time on the ergs? And like, I know in the back of my head that like it doesn't make that much of a variance, but there is something to be said about like seeing the vanity numbers of of some of the top
Mhm.
athletes when they're like ripping high 130s, low 140s. And then you're like, that is so much faster than when I'm pulling. But then in the grand scheme of things, like it doesn't make that much difference in a race. Like if the top guys are pulling 140s and you're pulling two flat, like yes, feels like a lot, but in the grand scheme of a race, it's less than a minute. We're talking about 40 seconds difference. That's just not going to have a massive impact. And so this is cool because I can see like obviously always need to get better at running. Like if I just stationed as expected and focused on my run, like, I could get there. So this is cool. Yeah, I really like this. Anything else that's noteworthy on this one that we should call out?
I would just say, for you, you've done a pro race, but if you're someone that has only done open and you run an open race report, we'll also give you these same next race predictions for pro, to give you a sense of what we think you'll do in a pro race based on how you've done in the open, as a little extra nudge, boost of confidence that you can do it.
Let's go. Let's get some people signing up for pro. If you want to make worlds, you got to sign up for pro anyway. It's your best shot. So, um, cool. All right. So we got two left here. So this one, podium sim results. This is interesting. So it basically shows your time, what or my time here against some of the other races. And these are this season though. So are
So
these the most
this, yeah.
recent?
So what this is showing, this is like future looking. This is kind of
Okay.
more of a fun feature, but this is looking at the next 12 races into the future, and we have a machine learning engine that's also predicting a podium threshold, which we think, okay, if you want to get on a podium for this age group in this division at this race, you're going to need to at the very least clear this time. And then we simulate you in these next races, and then simulate also just the greater field for these, to kind of calculate like
Mm,
what do we think is the chances that you could hit a podium for age group 30 to 34 in pro. And this is a very difficult thing to predict. Just Hyrox is growing so fast, and
yeah.
all it takes is a few people just to show up out of nowhere. And but we do this for every division and age group, solo and doubles, and it's more of kind of a fun thing, and just also just give some perspective on, like, if you want to aim for that podium threshold, like what's a good number, or what can you expect it to be. Um, yeah, more of a fun one, that I'll have to kind of mention, but yeah.
But I'd also imagine too that like that's the whole point of predictive analytics and kind of what you're doing scraping. Like you're gonna pull those outliers. Like all the people that come in and run a really fast race are factored for. Like, that is still a low probability. And we also see that for the most part, when people come in, as an example, one of the OCR goats, Ryan Atkins, came in to Hyrox Toronto, and I think the race brain guys kind of set the line of what they thought he could do. And they typically, for someone coming in, like, the question is, will they go over or under 65? So it's not like, it is still very rare for someone to come in and just completely like smash it. So I guess one selfish feature request that would be cool, because I do think that this is fun, and maybe you could do like a dollar charge for it if you needed to, but give people, it'd be cool if you could give people the option to, like, as an example, you do have people that are hunting world spots here in North America. We don't have as many races as they have in Europe, and so it'd be cool if you could select, like, we know the races that at least have been announced. So, like, could I select that I want to see, like, what's the podium probability of, I'm just going to name the North American races this fall and spring: Chicago, Dallas, Anaheim, Vegas, Miami, just to see, like, okay, if I'm trying to decide where I'm going to go, what does that look like historically? Because I have actually looked, just for my own knowledge, like, as an example, if I'm going to a race, I have looked at the past results of Houston as an example. Because typically the people that go to Houston are going to come back to Houston, and the times are actually, they are getting better, but they are similar, and it is similar names. And again, to your point, like, it's never going to be perfect because there are going to be new entrants every year. Like, I think I saw a Hybrid Fitness post today that there was over 25,000 finishers alone this weekend in Madrid and Birmingham. So, like, it's exploding for sure, but would be a kind of a cool feature if you're trying to plan out a season.
Yeah, that's actually what inspired this. Some people were asking, "Hey, I
A
want to
lot of
qualify for
people asking.
Worlds." A lot of people,
A lot, a lot of people have been
more than one.
asking.
But here it's just like, hey, if you want to fly to South Korea, like, so generally it helps identify like newer cities, newer countries, but kind of gives a sense of like how different is this than one that is very popular, and what's going into this. It's not just what did this city have last year, but it's taking into account like how is Hyrox trending globally, regionally, country, like all sorts of different factors go into this to try to get a good prediction.
Yeah, my main takeaway from this: I'm staying away from Manchester. Manchester would
Yeah,
not be good for
Europe
me.
is yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Last but not least, we got here how we're trending over time. So, race history. Again, I think this one is fairly self-explanatory, but it takes your up to your last 10 races and shows you how you're trending over time. So, where are you getting better versus where are you getting a little bit slower? As you can see, 2024 Anaheim burpee broad jumps. I fell back, but look at how we finished, baby. That's all that matters. We took a step back in the middle of the race so that we could hammer it towards the finish line.
That's it. Yeah, here just wanted to show a cool, heat map. There's so many numbers and digits, but just a way to just quickly identify faster or slower times across your splits in the past for this division. Just make it easy to spot trends.
Yeah. Well, dude, that's it. That's the RoxOpt report, dude. That's awesome. Thanks for walking us through that. Super valuable. Hope that our listeners find it valuable. Again, you can go to www.roxopt.com and pull your own RoxOpt report so you can use it for training this season. Jon, anything else that you want our listeners to know or to think about as they're evaluating these reports?
No, I mean, so we're always, I'm a big fan of continuous improvement, and we want to continue improving the product. So as you use this report, if there's any feedback you have, any new things you want to see or anything, please send them our way. Roxhop.com. There's a contact link to send it. But yeah, any feedback is always welcome. And yeah, and also if you're enjoying it, tell us too. It's yeah, and tell a friend.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you that are on the gram, you can find them at RoxOpt Official. Again, that's
Yeah,
at RoxOpt Official. Give them a follow. What they're doing is awesome. Definitely think that it's gonna kind of change the way of how we think through training. And I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about, especially for this community. We've got people who get into it, like, they get into it. And if you're gonna spend your hard-earned dollars traveling around the US or around the world, in a lot of cases racing, being able to know where you can actually spend your time to make that the most enjoyable experience possible is great. So, Jon, really appreciate it, man. Appreciate you hopping on. Love what you're doing. Can't wait to see the future iterations of this, and super excited for what's next.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. A lot
Yeah,
of fun.
thanks, Jon.
Talk to you later.